Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw us some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And this week, Kyle, I just wanted to start off by saying, I experienced my first case. This is, apartment probs. I experienced the first case of like a lot of rain happening and me getting brown water in my sink for a while yesterday.
Oh, is that a thing in your area?
It's a thing in like places with like where the plumbing's not super great. Like when the sewer is just like fucked up and the water level rises, sometimes the groundwater gets a little dirty. Luckily it only lasted like 2 hours or so, and then it was fine. But I don't know why I'm starting with this week. The thing that happens here is like once we do the intro on this show, my brain just pulls the first fucking thing it can think of and goes, say it and figure it out as you go.
Well, that's a good little sort of jumping off point for bits, but I do have a question for you that I think everybody at home is wondering. Mm-hmm. So I'll ask it on their behalf. Did you taste it?
I did not. I thought that might be bad for my health.
Yeah.
I thought, we considered like boiling some stuff and, just to like, but if it was going to be a prolonged problem, there's talks of going out and buying a thing of water bottles, even though single-use plastics water bottles are kind of a bad thing. But we had a Brita filled already, a big one. So like there were contingencies in place that I didn't have to breathe or brush my teeth with the dirty, nasty water. Because by the time I went to bed, the water was clear again.
Well, nonetheless, I'm sorry to hear that you had to deal with that. That sucks.
Yeah. It's weird that it was like, I mean, I guess it's not weird, but I'm on the third floor. So you think that like that something, there might be some chance for it to kind of get itself sorted by then.
Yeah, you'd think that like maybe the like detritus that's getting in the water that turns it brown would maybe like gravity would kind of do enough work as it's going up to the third floor pipes, like
all I'm saying is dirt is heavier than water. It should sink and should not come up to my pristine apartment.
Exactly. And it's thoughts like that are why we're the perfect hosts for a conspiracy theory podcast. But
yeah, I straight up the logic I'm using there is it could have been in the argument. I watched a TikTok today where a guy was just reaming a flat earther over Skype, and that was kind of my logic was tantamount to a lot of stuff that the flat earther was using.
Well, it's funny that you're having some water issues because like we have an issue here too. And my parents were here recently because they wanted to see this like place that I'm living in a new location and all that. And I explained the problem to my parents and realized after I finished explaining it that I sounded insane, that I haven't like moved on this issue. But we do have a particular sink in this house that we're living in where when you use the hot water, it can sort of feel like it's stinging you.
Like not in a heat way, but in like nettles kind of way, like spines.
Yeah.
That's weird.
It's very weird. And when we looked into it, it's either that the pipes are bad or there's a mild electrical current running through it maybe or something. It's like hitting something electrical.
Yeah, the electrical thing was my first thought, and other than like just shooting like metal barbs at you, which I
Yeah,
figured there would be some sort of
we would notice. Yeah.
physical presence of. But the electricity thing sounds bad. I would not.
Well,
Maybe don't use that sink
we
much.
don't use it as much, and like I said, I explained all of that just like very matter of factly to my parents, and they were like, "What the fuck?"
I mean, that does save you
So
like a lot of money on coffee because you just
yes,
wake up, put your hand under
that's
the
right.
electricity faucet,
Bzz.
and you're good to go.
Yeah, I do it every morning before my morning jog. Um Niall,
Fucking America's a fucking hellscape.
it's
Go ahead.
amazing. But Niall, this week I would
Uh-huh.
like to discuss what is the most genuinely, I think the most amount of time and effort that I have put into getting an episode together. This
That's honestly saying a lot because I will give you credit. Your episodes tend to take you take more time to prepare your episodes. I don't know if it's because I don't know what the reasoning is behind, but there have been some times that you've taken far too long to put an episode together. Uh,
wow.
in comparison to what I think is reasonable for a free comedy podcast. And the the fact that you're saying this is the most is
Yeah.
a little worrying for my friend Kyle who has only a limited number of hours in their life.
Yeah,
But
it's I don't know why, but I do I sort of treat a lot of this podcast like I don't already have a job and responsibilities. It's a real problem. I read fucking, like Whitley Strieber's Communion on my lunch break or fucking
yeah,
whatever. And oh Jesus, yeah, no, it's this is actually the most I have this is the culmination of actual months of work. Like I've had this planned in advance since last year.
Jesus Christ, dude.
So, so and ultimately this is going to be a two-parter. You'll kind of understand. There's a lot of passive work that went into this too.
Yeah.
And even with this,
Did you create a tulpa? Did you just like straight up
yeah.
just create a tulpa? So in your like downtime, you
Yep.
were just like manifesting and doing all the thought experiments to make that happen.
Topa Kyle too. If you could just come in off camera, you see that?
I mean,
See
it's
that
great.
shit?
We've been wanting a third host for quite
It's
some
true.
time. So I think we'd never considered making a tulpa the third host. But I think that's honestly a great decision. So I'm happy for you.
Well, and now what's going to happen is the other tulpa, which is just, I mean, physically, in speaking voice, just the exact same as me. So we're going to be swapping off, and in between, the other Kyle is going to, take sips of water, play a game on their phone,
Mhm.
and eventually, we're going to kind of lose our understanding of who the original Kyle is, and it's going to be a whole thing where like you'll have a gun trained on both of us and you'll be
Yeah.
sweating bullets and like I don't know who the real one is, and then we're
Where
gonna go
does
through
one
that.
end and the other begin, kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
Kind of a mind fuck ship of Theseus moment.
Yes, exactly. Now, Niall,
Yeah.
this even after all the fucking effort I've put into this, it's not going to be comprehensive. It's kind of by design that it really shouldn't be because it just wouldn't work. But I also think that this subject is one of the top important figures in the history of the weird in general, but in particular in the United States.
Okay.
This is all encompassing conspiracies, UFOs, the paranormal. I would argue that this person helped usher in and shape the modern age of the weird, the Fortean, whatever we want to call it. Because this week, I'm going to discuss the life and work of former Coast to Coast AM radio host Art Bell.
I was wondering, as soon as you started the preamble, I started thinking, is he going to do an Art Bell episode? That's great. I'm happy for you that you're the one doing this episode and not me. This is gonna be great. Art Bell is someone that I has loomed large over this whole world for as long as I've been in it, and I can't say that I'm super familiar with the man himself. So
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Well, the way this is going to work is so I've been listening to the Art Bell archives being uploaded to podcatchers for actual months now. Like maybe we're coming up on like maybe almost 8 months of dipping in and out, and then listening to this. And I must say, check that out. If you look up Art Bell Tape Vault online, you'll find it. They have like a link tree, and it's on like most podcatchers. I think even Spotify. Which
really?
it's not even like, it's just somebody who has a massive archive of the Coast to Coast show from like the early 90s all the way up to the early 2000s. And you can listen to episodes, and it's great. It's a great time. I must say, it's awesome. I love listening to it. I also, for this particular podcast series of episodes, I read almost the entirety of Art Bell's book, The Art of Talk, where I found one of the very few sources on his personal life that you can find.
Oh, okay.
He's a pretty private guy. So even though he opens up in this book, there's like some of the more intimate details are taken out, but there's a lot in there. So it's and even before I got into the archives, I'd heard a few select episodes over the years, so I knew eventually we'd have to talk about him. And I think he's very worth talking about. And I'm going to be pretty extensive, but within reason.
We're not going to go day by day through his childhood or anything.
I mean, I do have stuff about his childhood. We're going to learn. So the way this will work is, first episode is going to be the life of the man and getting to the point where he sets up Coast to Coast. And then episode 2 will be the legacy of Coast to Coast and a lot of the stuff that happened there. Because I'm sure you're already aware, Niall, but Coast to Coast has been host to so many of Ghosts. And it's been host to so many stories that we have covered on our show. Like, there's so much shit. It's really incredible. So, but we're gonna talk about who he was first before we get into the legacy of the show itself. That'll be part 2. So,
cool.
That's what we're getting into. So, for people who are maybe not aware, Art Bell was a radio host for a late night call-in talk show called Coast to Coast AM. Now, Coast to Coast would eventually become extremely popular for its coverage of UFOs, conspiracies, the paranormal, and a whole smattering of weird subjects. And Art would become pretty deeply involved in the world of weird, eventually having, his own strange experiences. But we'll get into that in part 2. After all the digging through the archives, I also couldn't help but become fascinated with his radio persona and the wild stories he'd entertain. And I felt compelled to learn about him. And I will say, he is like, as far as like a radio voice and personality goes, he is very compelling. Like, there is a reason he was so successful while he was doing this show. So Arthur William Bell III was born June 17th, 1945 in Jacksonville, Florida. He was born at the Marine Corps Military Base Camp Lejeune, where his parents met. That would be Arthur Bell II and then Jane Gumar. Gumare? It's not Gumar. It can't be Gumar because that's a Sopranos. That's an Italian mafia side chick thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to pronounce this woman's name. Gumaer? Gumare? Gumare?
Sure.
Sorry, I don't know. But what's fucked up about this, also in listening to so much of the show and reading about his life, which you can also find him narrating his book about his life. Again, captivating voice. I have developed opinions about him and his whole thing. But anyways, both of Art's parents were Marines, which is like, honestly, like you tell me that if I know nothing else about a person and then they tell me both of my parents are Marines, I was like, your life was fucked up, wasn't it?
Yeah, you had to bounce a quarter off your bed sheets every day and shit. That's immediately what comes to mind. Maybe these parents weren't absolute nightmares, but in general, I think military parents tend to raise
yeah,
a little, maybe not the best track record.
Yeah, well,
in general,
this fact of them both being Marines, Art himself seems to think that had a significant negative impact on their marriage. So as such, Art's early life, like his childhood is kind of tragic. He, describes his father as a bit of a hard ass, and his mother is similarly tough, but a bit more supportive. But like you said, they're both kind of hard asses. Now, anecdotally, according to Art, he claims that his mother claimed to him that his first word sounded a lot like radio. Which I kind of doubt this. A lot of Art's thing is telling these cute little stories that are probably not true, but like he sounds, the way he tells them and how just naturally nice sounding his voice is, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, okay, I'm with you. That's his thing.
I'm gonna just do my best right now to put this. I'm gonna say this one thing and then hope to not revisit it the entire time.
Yeah.
The way you're describing him, I recently have read 2 books by the self-proclaimed GOAT, Chris Jericho. That the first one deals with basically his run, his early life and up through basically the night that he's going to debut with the WWE. So it's all like the build-up stuff. And then the second book starts with his like actual WWE run, which almost seems like the different episode 1 and episode 2 of Art Bell that we're going to be doing here. But there's a lot of stuff that in his book, especially in the first one, where it's just like, there's no way this is how this happened. Like you can tell that he is like self-mythologizing in a way that he's charismatic even through his writing, and you just kind of go with it because it's a good story. Yeah. And I feel like with like anyone who spends that much time talking and putting a version of themselves out there, you get into that where you like start to build the presence on the radio or on TV or whatever it ends up being that is mostly yourself, but starts to like mythologize yourself in a way.
Yeah, no, I think there is a bit of truth to that. I don't know whether, I bet you, I would honestly, just intuitively, I would say that Chris Jericho, professional wrestler Chris Jericho, is a bit more of that than Art Bell was.
Turn to 11. 100%.
Yeah. So, but it is kind of funny making the comparison of Art Bell and Chris Jericho because because it's not totally wrong, and 2, there is an entire episode that I listened to about 40 minutes of Talk is Jericho, where it is Jericho and Brian Alvarez talking about the legacy of Art Bell when he died.
Oh, really? I didn't listen to the Art Bell one, but I have listened to one of Jericho's. I'm going to bring on a random conspiracy theorist and just like uncritically let him talk forever.
Yeah.
Which is just.
I will say, I guess I should have said this up front, but like there is a lot of coast to coast that it's a very unique show. We'll really get into it in the second part. Yeah. And it's not totally condemnable, but it is a lot of uncritical like when I talk about Art kind of like making a story sound reasonable, he does that with a lot of just total bullshit. And it is sometimes unclear to what extent he is buying into it legitimately or not. Because I think on some level, and we will get into this, he is aware that a lot of this stuff is bullshit, but makes for good radio the way he presents it.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
So, radio would become Art's passion in life. Art would even say at one point, thank God for the radio, because he struggled both at school and at home. And at school, he kind of describes himself as rambunctious at worst, disinterested at best. Can't blame him, because that's kind of, I felt that way. And then coming home was just not really any better. He describes his childhood as being mostly defined by his parents' outrageous fights, some that would go late into the night. And Art would later learn that his parents stayed...
It's called the Korean War. No, I'm kidding. It took me a second to try to think of what war would have maybe even slightly lined up with that. And I don't know if I nailed that at all, but I get the joke works.
The joke functions nonetheless. But Art would eventually learn, like later on in his life, that his parents actually stayed together for the sake of their children. And then Art says that them separating would have done a far better job of sparing him and his siblings than staying together. Yeah. It's rough. So with all of that going on, Art would spend most of his free time becoming engrossed with radio and the technology that surrounds it. Around the age of 12, there's some again, there's a lot of anecdotes here where it's like, that's probably true. And then there's other ones that are like, I don't know how true that is. But I don't think he ever just outright lies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, or at least when he's telling stories about himself. So, around the age of 12, Art actually forges a friendship with a neighbor named Paul Weiss. And Weiss was a Polish physicist. I'm pronouncing it like they're German, but it's probably Weiss, right? That's
I honestly don't know.
I don't know either.
How that goes, but
well,
sure.
he has a friendship with this Polish physicist that's living in the U.S. working with and studying nuclear fission. But more importantly for Art, this neighbor was also a seasoned ham radio operator, which to kind of very quickly explain what.
The pause you left on there really sounded like you were going to do something with honey baked.
Yes.
This is a seasoned ham.
Yeah. Oh my God. I just realized it's a seasoned ham. I didn't even think of that. Jesus Christ.
I'm fucking 5 years old, but the little pause there that was left really got me.
Honey baked radio operator.
Yeah.
I mean, a ham radio thing is just amateur radio, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's.
I know what it actually is.
Right. Well, for the listeners at home, if you don't know, that's what it is. And this Weiss fella would not only teach Art how to operate a seasoned honey baked ham radio, but he would also explain electronics generally and even Morse code to Art. And there's this nice little endearing anecdote that Art mentions about how he got so invested in ham radio that he would be driving with his mother through the neighborhood, and he would have her stop at various houses as they drove around whenever he spotted a ham radio antenna. And then he would go to the house, knock on the door, meet the neighbor, get let inside, and discuss like ham radio with them. And then he would usually leave the neighbor's house with like a new piece of radio equipment.
Jesus Christ.
He was really into it.
That's both impressive and kind of the fact that his parents just let him go into random people's homes because they had a ham radio antenna, which is historically maybe, I don't know if this is just the way media portrays it, but not the most savory of people do it. Like a lot of times ham operators get depicted as very much weirdos, but I don't know if that's like it's like people who have no other life and just are on the ham radio.
To be fair, that is kind of what happens.
That's what he
Art.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't really think of like how ham radio was like, I guess, stigmatized. I didn't consider that, but now that you're saying it, I guess that is kind of how I've seen it depicted. But interesting. Well, I don't know. I guess his mom just was like, I mean, she would wait for him to come out. Like,
yeah, and her parents were both Marines, or his parents were both Marines, so they
were packing.
They can call in a drone strike. Like it's going to be fine.
Yeah, a 1950s drone strike.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, by the age of 13, Art had actually passed the ham radio operator test. So he's a wee lad, and he's fucking fully an amateur radio operator. So through communicating with people all over the place via his ham radio, he also developed a desire for travel. So he kind of talks, I'm skipping over a lot of details of his childhood that we don't need to get into, but he brings up running away from home a number of times. So my kind of reading is that he has this, he has all these people around all over the place that he can contact, but also he wants to get the fuck out of his house. So these two desires are kind of he wants to escape his home life. So these desires are sort of intermingling. So ultimately, with no real school prospects and this tumultuous home life, all of this leads to him enlisting in the Air Force at the age of 17.
It's kind of good that he was born when he did, because otherwise this man would have been in a pop punk band. So much, immediately this guy would be playing bass in someone who sounds kind of like the Wonder Years. And I think Coast to Coast would have never existed.
Yeah,
because he'd be playing he'd be standing outside of Warped Tour trying to get an opening gig. Come on.
So, he's 17. It's 1962, and it is the early stages of America's official involvement in the Vietnam War. Art would actually end up briefly stationed in Vietnam as a medic, but He doesn't speak too much about this. He basically just says that what little he did witness was just too horrible to recount. Like, he doesn't want to talk about it, which tracks with the Vietnam War, the fucking
Yeah.
atrocity there. Now, during his time in the military, Art bounced around different Air Force bases. So, he went to boot camp, and then he would learn to become a medic and things like that. And then it's at Amarillo Air Force Base in Amarillo, Texas, where he would set up an illegal radio station and get his first true taste for the entertainment medium. So as he
That
tells
rules.
it's honestly, there's so much of this early radio shit that I'm like, damn, that is really cool. It's very DIY.
Yeah.
Because as he tells it, he's just literally bored on the base one day when he finds a variable frequency oscillator, which is a device that is essentially used to drive a ham radio. And so using this thing, Art was able to convert it to operate on the AM broadcasting frequency. So he then sets up this little radio station, completely unbeknownst to his superior officers in the barracks.
That rules.
And so Art and a few of his military buddies who are also interested in radio help him with this secret operation. Eventually, they're found out. However, instead of getting punished, it's like literally like a movie, this next little bit. They don't get punished. The commanding officer, they basically tell him like, hey, we're we just thought it'd be good to share music with, our fellow military men here on the base. And their commanding officer is just like, look, you can't do this in the barracks, but we have proper radio rooms, so maybe we'll just get you set up with one of those. So
Okay. I mean, that's about as well as that could have gone. Like, we're gonna get you set up for real. That works.
I mean, this is like Forrest Gump plays Art Bell in a flashback scene. You can picture the movie, is what I'm saying, for this particular moment. So,
and the thing is, the way that just went really feels like it would be more in like a Bohemian Rhapsody type kind of like schlocky.
Yeah.
It's things happen a little too coincidentally, a little too perfectly and neatly, and it doesn't seem like the people ever have to really struggle to overcome.
and the thing is, he mentions something about the military just kind of generally that I've read in other far more darker stories about the real life military operations, which is essentially that so many times these superior officers have a mentality of like, we don't actually care what you're doing. We just don't want to see it. Like, do it out of sight. Which I think
don't make problems for me. Basically.
Right. I think it's a logic that extends to more fucked up shit. So not logic, but just how they run the show essentially. So yeah, they end up setting it up in this little radio room that they have. And they're just looking to broadcast this music to the men on the base. However, Art and his radio gang eventually realized that the antenna they were using for this project worked a little too well.
Okay.
They were being picked up about 30 miles away in the city of Amarillo. And notably, Art and his radio show on the base was not running commercials. Like, it was commercial-free radio. So when folks picked up on their show in Amarillo, they were getting what was essentially the exact same radio shows in their area, but without advertisement breaks.
I mean, I like this stuff where like things are still Wild West enough that like this pirate radio thing can just like fuck up and get too good, and it causes trouble for like the radio magnates in the area. Like,
yeah,
this is. Look, I'm just waiting for UHF to happen here.
Yeah,
I think we're on the road to a good old like UHF scenario.
A lot of this stuff whips. I do genuinely love a lot of this. Now, apparently in the radio world, there is a yearly survey that's conducted in these geographic areas to kind of learn about the stations that are being listened to there. And his show was popular enough and getting picked up enough, this illegal show, that it showed up on the survey that year. And then other radio stations in the area are like, what the fuck? We're getting, like, intentionally or no, we're getting cheated out of listenership.
Yeah.
So
he got too popular that to the fact where he started getting like notoriety. That's fun.
That's what ultimately gets the show shut down by the superior officers. It's like, this is too much trouble than it's worth. But regardless, Art's amateur military radio show had aired for a full year before being shut down, so that seems to have counted for proper experience because this would later help him get a job. Now, oh boy. Okay, so he ends up being sent to a base on Okinawa in Japan.
Okay.
After a little over a year at Amarillo, I believe 18 months. And man, do we get some fun facts about Art Bell here, which I had kind of picked up on some of this from his radio show because he will kind of mention it, but he won't. He goes into more detail in the book. He describes his stint in Japan as a, quote, amazing, intriguing, life-altering experience.
Okay, in what way?
I'm going to just read from
What do you mean by that, Art?
I'll just read from his words here. Because I'm just gonna read from his words. Quote, on the base, I did my job as a medic at the hospital there. Every spare moment I had, and any moment I could get off the base, I spent my time carousing, learning about the culture, and womanizing. This is when I developed my love for, he says, he means Asian women.
Okay.
This is when he developed his love for Asian women. The experience was so incredible to me, and I finally just figured a way to move off base. I so wanted to assimilate completely with these people. Off base, I lived as a Japanese person, living with a Japanese girl in a Japanese home. Like the Japanese, I slept on the floor on tatami mats, ate their food, wore their clothes, watched Japanese television, and so on. It was as though I were Japanese. The Air Force, of course, was not thrilled about me cohabitating with one of the locals. They felt that I had a barracks room on the base, and that was where I should be. So to offset this, I hired an Okinawan to keep my barracks room on the base clean and shine my shoes and put them in their place under the bed.
Now, was this person a civilian that he like gave access to his base
I would
room?
assume probably. I don't know.
Like,
he doesn't say.
You can't just pay one of the like other recruits to do this for you. Like, I think that.
Maybe there were Japanese military men on the base with. I don't really know because he doesn't say.
Yeah. That is a strange story for him to like elaborate on that specific detail on. I mean, look, going full native is fine. Like, there's no actual problem with it. It just is funny that like this guy lived specifically the life of the guy of the dad from Tokyo Drift.
He's a weeb.
Straight up, Kyle. I know you have not seen this movie, but the guy that is the protagonist's father in Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift,
okay,
the third movie, he is a military guy who is stationed in Japan and lives in the middle of like the whatever city it is that all this stuff takes place in. Maybe I don't know if it's Tokyo or whatever. In like a very traditional styled home, surrounded by neon lights and everything.
Yeah,
and like is involved with a local and is still working in the military. It is
well that
the parallels to Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift were not what I was expecting to be going into in this episode.
Art Bell, coast to coast Okinawa Drift. I mean, oh my God. I mean, look, I'm going to say it. He was a very terrible fetishist of Asian women.
Okay. Look, that's fucked up, but
literally
that sucks.
In his book, his opinions on women are like, oh my God, it's so dumb. Basically, to give you, he literally has a chapter that is just titled "Women."
Oh no!
And in it, he brings up that he just loves, and he does not use the term Asian. He uses a very outdated term. But he has literally a spread in his book that is like different photos of different Asian women from different countries. And him just being like, I love them all. They're all beautiful. They're all so beautiful. It's really fucking
wild.
Why
you put this in your book?
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking. It's
like writing about loving the culture and trying to live like not like a foreigner. Sure, that makes perfect sense to include in your book. but just like a spread of various
He
women from different Asian countries saying how much you love all of them is very
Yeah,
weird.
it is weird. He literally goes out of his way to spend like 3 or 4 pages to like extol the virtues of loving beautiful Asian women. It is really fucking weird. Um and I mean it's the chapter is about his wives essentially, like the women that he's been with. And at the time the book was published, he had only had I think 3 wives. He was on his
Only,
third, I
huh?
believe. Yeah, he has more later. Um, so we'll get into that. But uh,
All right.
his entire thing with women is really terrible. Which this is a thing that we'll briefly touch on here and probably get into more in part 2. But uh, he art has may have been a bit of a womanizer. He has a lot of references to his he's very like conservative, right? Like he's just generally
Mhm.
conservative, but he has an outlook on women that is very he straight up says that he believes in like traditional roles for men and women. Um I mean, and yeah, he blends like his military service chapter into the chapter titled Women. I'm really going to skip over it, but like I don't know. His first wife was not an Asian woman named Kim, and he like talks about how like they were ultimately in a loveless relationship, and like she just like believes he should be satisfied with just having good work, even though he's actually like bored with doing the work that he's doing on it, and blah blah blah. And then eventually he meets this woman Ramona, who, by the way, he literally says that she has Asian blood, but doesn't use the word Asian. And says like this is the love of his life and all that stuff. And I also think it's kind of important to say that he's not like, I don't know, he's not directly hateful, but he is passively terribly sexist. And he even like straight up says
Yeah.
like, yeah, people probably call me a chauvinist, and that may be true. And I'm like, all right, man, I guess at least
I,
you're admitting it. Uh,
is lamp shading the issue helping? I don't know if that
it's
if you're aware of it, maybe think about it and work on that. But
he has a
it's,
he has a tumultuous thing with women, and he's not like, yeah, whatever. It's fucking weird, and I'm mentioning it. His political and social views are kind of odd because I would say he's mostly conservative. Like he is super concerned, for instance, with gun control and how gun control is like a violation of American citizens' rights. But on the other hand, he'll also like go on rants and like very staunchly defend the issue of global warming, and like point to a lot of the clear evidence of the phenomena on his show, like while he's hosting Coast to
mhm.
Coast. So he actually straight up refers to himself as a mutt for his political views. He says that he was a bit split by his parents. I forget which one was more conservative and which one was more liberal, but that's what it was. But let's be real, like he is, especially like now when we think of like these things, he is just like a quote unquote soft, quote unquote old fashioned conservative. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so, anyways, he ends up discharging from the Air Force in 1966, and at some point in there, his parents did get divorced while he was in the service for like he's in there for like 4 years, and they get divorced somewhere in there. Um, and it's at this time in 1966 when the seed of his career in radio broadcasting is planted. Uh, his time working with his illegal radio station secures him a job doing this kind of mundane religious show in New Jersey where he basically just reads the news out loud during certain segments. Uh, and he has fun little anecdote here for his experience here. So he says, quote, now, the station manager at this place had this eccentricity about broadcasters speaking too close to the microphone. Tell me if you can relate to this, Niall.
Yeah.
He hated it when you could hear the pff, pff when a host spoke into the microphone, especially when pronouncing words with P in them. His way of correcting people who were in the habit of speaking too close to the microphone was to pull the chair out from under them. Apparently, he thought
I've never tried that.
if Niall were to pull the chair out from under me whenever I had horrible plosives, I would have my ass would be obliterated. Um,
Yeah.
But Art goes on to say, apparently he thought I had this habit, so every once in a while he would sneak in and pull the chair right out from under me. Listeners heard a thud and a groan as I hit the floor. You can guess that I was quickly broken of this habit.
I mean, I guess it's effective. Like,
Yeah.
is it assault? Maybe, but is it a way to quickly learn someone some good mic etiquette? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So he, I guess, spends a few months at this job, leaves the job. He ends up at a different job in New York for about 8 months. And a current that kind of goes through much of his early radio work is that he gets bored really fast. I mean, that's according to him. Like he just did not want to stick with these jobs, and he was just like bored by them, not really doing anything interesting. So, he can get this like steady work, but he's just not feeling it. And he also notes that at this time he's very much pining for Japan, but he didn't really see how he could return without reenlisting in the military. So, on a whim, he writes a letter to the only English language radio station in Japan, known as KSBK, which was this Japanese owned station that catered to the 250,000 person American population on the island of Okinawa, who were mostly military people. And lucky for Art, based off of like a tape that he sends of himself and his, essentially his resume and a letter, they decided to bring him on to KSBK. They literally fly him out there and handle all that for him. And it's just, it's a dream come true.
Yeah.
Now, his conditions at the station are hilarious because, one, he is no longer under military control, which is what was overseeing him the last time he was in Japan. But two, the Japanese owners assumed he was under control of the military.
Okay.
Ultimately, this meant that there was not that much oversight, so he, in his own words, quote unquote, was out of control.
So he could just do whatever he wanted because everyone thought that he was under someone else's thumb.
Yes.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
It's honestly like, it sounds like he had one hell of a time. So
I wonder if there's anyone that has recordings of this shit, like both him getting his chair taken out from under him and at this other radio station, or his like just the fact that he went from doing a pirate radio station thing, did some boring shit, but then went and was just handed basically the keys to a radio station in Japan and given no oversight.
Yeah.
Is that's a fucking that's a movie. That's not an actual thing that happens to people.
Yeah. Again, this is his account, but like, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard. He has a lot of specific stories and things, but there's also record, I know, of some of the things. Like you can see pictures and things in the book. And whether or not there's recordings of this, I have to assume some of it based on what I'm about to tell you. And also like in the book, I listened through the audiobook because it's fun to hear Art Bell talk about things. And he plays at one point a clip of his illegal radio show from the military. Like somehow he has a recording of one of those.
Good.
So I'm assuming some of this stuff got saved. I don't know if any of the other stuff I mentioned, but I haven't heard this stuff specifically. But they would basically just, when he wasn't actually in the studio, he would end up doing these live remote broadcasts in the bar district, and they would just set up equipment and talk to people at the bar. It would basically be an advertisement for the bar, and then it would also bring attention to the station that he was working at.
So he was straight up just doing like actual man on the street kind of, but with the only real edict being this is to bring people to a bar.
Yeah.
So like, what did he do? Like, what were these?
He
do you
was
have any
advertising.
idea what this was?
He was advertising. So like, he would basically go out and he would tell people on air like, wow, this bar is amazing, great drinks, cheap, and also, wow, the ladies are so good looking. And this was meant to.
And I would know. I'm an aficionado.
He is an aficionado of Japanese women, apparently.
Jesus.
And he would basically try and get the military men that lived in the area to come to the bar. And apparently it was very effective.
Yeah, okay.
But he also sort of became this popular disc jockey. You know, he played music and the news and even some talk radio. So he was like kind of dabbling in all the different stuff you can do. Um, uh, but the most interesting stuff that he did at KSBK was he participated in trying to break world records. Again,
Okay.
just to
Has that gone away? Like, I feel like the Guinness World Record stuff is not nearly as popular now as when we were kids.
no, I agree. I think the world collectively was like, "Oh shit, we forgot about that." All the world
Yeah.
record stuff is like speed running. I got that's at least that's all I'm aware
Yeah.
of. But I don't know. Presumably, there's somebody out there who's just like really, really desperately wants to break some sort of world record, and they have to. Be
I
out
feel like
there.
I feel like the only place I hear about world records nowadays is on like morning talk shows
Mhm.
when they like collectively are trying to do some dumb bullshit or some person comes in to do something on air, and that's about it.
Well, Art made it a point to try and do this stuff while he was at KSBK. Um, his first thing that he did was to do the longest continuous broadcast. So he was on air nonstop for 115 hours and 15 minutes. He would
Jesus Christ.
yeah. So he starts Monday afternoon, and he would just go, just doing all the different things, talk radio, music, et cetera, et cetera. He would just do it until Saturday afternoon. He played a lot of music for that, just because that would be easier to carry him, but he would also talk a little bit. And this record breaking did, I guess, get a lot of attention. People, I guess, would sort of come by the station while he was doing it to cheer him on. And he, according to him, his words, quote, probably half the island at some point tuned me in just to listen to the DJ who was doing the world record broadcast.
I mean, I guess that's a pretty good thing to like get interest is to be trying to do this like this long ass broadcast, you know? Like,
Mhm.
I guess that works. I guess that makes sense, but it's just I don't know. How do you fill that time? I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess if you're playing music, that's fine, but like
He said it
Jesus
was mostly
Christ.
music. Now, he also claims that doctors and nurses would sometimes come in and check up on him while he was doing this and take his pulse, you know, check his oxygen, blood pressure, etc. He also says that he originally started drinking coffee, but eventually they, quote unquote, I'm assuming this is people at the station, they wouldn't let him drink any more coffee because they were worried about his health. So instead of coffee, he kept himself awake by taking cans of frozen tomato juice and orange juice and then held them against his carotid artery. And he claims
Okay.
that sort of like helped shock him back to wakefulness.
Look, I've sometimes been doing a late night drive, and you pop a bevy from the gas station, and it's fresh out of the fridge, so you start like holding it to the side of your head to keep yourself awake and stuff. That works for a while. I don't think I could do like 6 days on that though.
No, it's
Fucking
it's
5
really
days, whatever it was.
It's really insane. Yeah, Monday to Saturday. It's fucking crazy. Here's his own words about the experience that I think it's interesting.
Okay.
Quote, this was an odd experience, mostly because of the sleep deprivation.
No shit.
After a few days without sleep, I became delirious, and it was as though I entered a different world. There were a couple of times things got very strange for me. I knew I was awake and I was walking around, and I didn't fall over or anything, but I distinctly remember that I was not in reality. I just lost touch with reality. This was a very disconcerting experience for me. Normally, I am in control and am very much aware of everything going on around me, but without sleep, my mind started to do some weird things. I felt as though I were floating around in a different world, opening refrigerators, walking up and down stairs, but not really feeling as though I were part of this world. It was frightening, but I did it. I broke the world record in endurance broadcasting. I would never do this again. Once in a lifetime is enough for me. Of course, not long after, a disc jockey in Denver broke the record. For me, however, this stunt did a great deal to increase my popularity at KSBK, although I am also convinced I incurred some permanent physical and possible mental damage as a result of this stupid stunt.
Jesus. I was wondering about that. The whole like, oh, I'd never do it again. Yeah, I would think so because like if you do that too many times, I feel like you only have so much. Look, this is I'm gonna say some stupid shit here. It there's some essence in you that I feel like if you stay up for 6 days in a row, you start to drain it. And I don't know if you ever get that shit back.
Yeah.
You know, like there's something inside of me. I don't know what it is, but if I went to do something like that, it would irreparably change me as a person.
Yeah. I mean,
And I don't know if I want that.
I think my record of staying up is like 2 days straight. Like I could not fathom that amount
I think
of
I
time.
got into a third day one time in college.
Tough.
But I was dead at
Yeah.
that point. Like I cannot fathom doing double that.
Staying up 2 days straight, like it was traumatic enough for me that I remember exactly where I was and what I was doing during that time because it fucked me up. This brought a lot of publicity doing this bullshit. And a year later, he would do another attempt at a world record breaking thing for publicity. And this one is, it's like, it was the world record of seesawing while broadcasting.
Okay, so he's now on to at total nonsense because he doesn't want to do
Doesn't want to stay up for
anything
5 days straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hey, I can't blame him. You can get a Guinness World Record for really stupid shit.
Yeah.
I had that book as a kid. So seesawing while broadcasting, sure, why
Well,
not?
he talks about how he got like a guy from the Navy to come and be his seesaw partner. And then they competed with a pair of Marines to do this on air. And he talks about how basically they had like...
Why was it a competition?
I don't know. I don't know. The idea was that they wouldn't stop for breaks or eating or sleeping or the bathroom. And basically what he describes is like they had somebody help them hook up like a military bag that you could strap to your leg that would like let you pee into it. And
catheter.
Essentially, it was a catheter, yes. I don't think it was quite as intense as a catheter, but they had a device that let them pee into a thing, and it would then collect in a bag, and they just strapped it to... it's like a colostomy bag. And but I don't think like they're inserting like... They're not actually inserting a catheter, right? So...
Okay.
But he's like, first of all, very happy that nobody ever had to take a shit during this contest. Nobody had to stop for that.
Do you know how long this went?
I believe it was 40 hours.
Okay.
So and the other thing that was very funny to me is he describes how like they would relieve themselves into the bag, and then somebody would have to come and then help as they are seesawing, so going up and down to try and take and replace the bag that was filled with pee.
That sounds like a thing they would try to have Steve-O do on Jackass. We're gonna be seesawing, and you're gonna have to swap out these bags filled with piss, and it just ends with him getting covered in piss.
Yeah.
Like that, and the fact that they made it okay. I reacted to it, but we didn't stop for this. Why did he bring in a second set of people to do the seesawing if he's just trying to break a world record? You don't need competition.
I don't know. I think that it was just part of the fun of it, quote unquote. I mean, the way it ended too is like Art and his Navy guy, like they kept going, and then it ended when one of the Marines just actually passed out.
Okay.
So maybe they just knew that like, oh, this guy's got a weaker constitution. We can like end it and call it the world record or whatever. I don't really know. So yeah, that's
okay.
That's
look. I get that this is all of this shit is like carny spectacle, but it's just it blows my mind that he thought that he should bring in a second set of two Marines.
I don't know
to like because that I feel like he's baking in reasons for his stunt to fail, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't know, but that's how it went.
Okay.
So Yeah, at the end, they kept going after the Marine passes out for an additional 17 hours. So 57 hours for the new world record.
What?
So, uh,
At this point, I shouldn't ask. Okay, 57 hours. Look.
he,
We'll beat this thing. We'll go for 60 hours podcasting on a seesaw.
he literally like caps the story about doing these stunts with the things you do when you're young and stupid. So, unfortunately, Art's time in Okinawa would end tragically. He spends about 6 years there at KSBK, and during this time, he seems to have had a relationship with a Japanese woman, which he doesn't get into the details about this. But he says that this woman unfortunately suffered from some sort of severe mental illness, and that he tried to help her. He like was desperate to try and help her, but at a certain point he realized that she was too far gone. He says that she could no longer recognize who he was. And that's kind of where the story of that ends, because then he just says, yeah, so I returned to America after this woman's health goes down the drain. I have no details beyond that. Like, I don't know what happened to this woman, who she was. But he's like, I don't know what happened there. So after his return, we can sort of summarize the next decade or so of his career as a rock and roll jock. However, there's not a lot to talk about in that era. This era, he's most known for talk radio, right? So the actual talk radio era of his life would begin in 1978 with his work at Las Vegas radio station KDWN. And Art reveals that for much of his life, there's like a whole section in his book that's just like, here's like personal things about me that like I don't really get into on air. Apparently the dude often suffered from panic attacks.
Okay.
And I guess at KDWN, he had a really intense boss. He describes like shouting matches with this boss. She was like a total authoritarian about how the station was run. But what ends up happening is Art kind of gets his big break at the station, where he ends up taking over for one of the late night hosts on an evening that they were sick and couldn't come in. So Art takes this all night slot, which I think is like 1 to 5 a.m.
Okay.
And he talks about how like the first couple times he did this, like he ends up taking over the show. He talks about pushing through this like panic attack. He just says that there's no recordings of this, but like he guarantees that his nervousness came across on the radio. And it's a little weird because like all the other stuff that I mentioned up to this point, he doesn't really talk about being like super nervous and panicky. But something about this radio station really does it for him. I wonder if maybe it's the boss or just like this is like the biggest radio station outside of like working in Okinawa. Like he literally says half of Okinawa is listening to him. So I don't quite know what it is that's giving him the jitters, but it's kind of besides the point.
Terrestrial talk radio as opposed to being a foreign language
right.
in Japan, like there is a difference there. I get that. And also now he's working for a woman, which I don't know how he feels about that, but I can see that being different. Because like the American airwaves are very competitive.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tensions at the place that like we can't really get into all the details here because it's too much. But there's a lot of tension at this radio station. So he pushes through this like panic attacky sort of phase to run this show, and apparently his method on this all night show, this late night show, it was very enticing. So a lot of calls came in from listeners to a show that didn't typically have that happen. Apparently, like he says that this show was originally sort of filling airtime and was basically boring, and the host didn't really do a lot with it. But what happens here is this eventually leads to shifting the original host of the daytime, like the original host of this late night show, to a daytime slot and putting in Art Bell, permanently replacing
Okay.
him. And now the program is called West Coast AM. Now I have another Art Bell story here from his time at KDWN that I just is amazing.
Okay. I'm excited.
So, here's what he says. Quote, there are a number of interesting stories about West Coast AM from when we first got started. For one thing, at that time, KDWN was located in the Las Vegas Plaza Hotel. And as a part of a trade-off for advertising the hotel on the air, the Plaza Hotel provided the toll-free number 800 number used on the air during my show. For years, when Hank, which is the original host, when Hank gave the 800 number on his show, it was hardly ever used. On average, the 800 number phone bill was maybe $100 per month. The Plaza Hotel didn't think anything of paying this bill, but after I was on the air for 1 month, they got the bill, only this time it was for $12,000.
Holy shit.
Plaza Hotel management went through the roof. Needless to say, they immediately pulled the 800 number. KDWN had to get its own 800 number to accommodate all the calls I was getting, and there were many of them. One night, when I was doing my show at the Plaza Hotel, I suddenly felt something drip on my head. Drip, drip, drip. I touched my head and looked up to discover that it was some strange liquid seeping from a crack in the ceiling. This was so disconcerting to me as I proceeded with my show that I related it to my listeners. You're not going to believe this, but my ceiling seems to be dripping, I said on the air. The dripping did not let up, so I got up and sort of stood to one side near the microphone and tried to continue doing my show. But the dripping seemed to get worse. Drip, 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 and more drips and more drips. Now the stuff from the ceiling was dripping on my equipment. The board and electronics in the studio were getting these drips, and I began to panic. Oh my God, I exclaimed on the air. I'm going to get electrocuted. These drips are getting on my equipment. I was now up and wandering around, still talking to my listeners, while I was trying to look into our adjacent production studio, which I could see through a pane of glass that divided me from this studio. I thought, oh my God, now there is dripping coming through the ceiling in the production studio. The awful drips were getting on the equipment in the other room. I also noticed that drips were getting on the stuff in the VIP room, the newsroom, the whole place was dripping. I freaked out. My listeners freaked out. I got on the phone with Claire Reese. That's his boss, by the way.
Okay.
I was panicked and she began to panic. She got in her car and drove down to the station. In the meantime, everyone was calling maintenance at the hotel to find out what was going on. I then received a call from the owner of the station, Bob Blanche, who facetiously called me on a private line and told me that there was a 200,000-gallon swimming pool right above my head. This did not help things. Mr. Blanche just laughed and laughed and laughed. He rarely...
that doesn't explain why it's dripping. The pool has been there. The difference is now it is leaking onto thousands of dollars of broadcasting equipment. Don't laugh at me. I would be so pissed in this situation.
Oh my God. He goes on to say he rarely chided me, but this time he couldn't help himself for some reason. I continued to panic and tried my best to keep the show going without getting electrocuted. I went to commercial breaks over and over again. To avoid electrocution or the destruction of the equipment, Claire Reese had thrown blankets over everything. The dripping continued, and I ended up trying to hold my ground for about an hour and a half. Finally, hotel maintenance sent 2 guys to investigate the damage. By this time, I had taken a moment to examine this peculiar, nasty-looking liquid more closely. I noted that it was a brownish murky color. In fact, it looked like there was brownish murky particulate matter suspended in the liquid. I assumed that if this were pool water, it was probably just getting dirty as it passed through the ceiling. Beyond that, I didn't give it much more thought. The maintenance men wandered around the studio, and I thought, why not put these guys on air? I had been receiving a barrage of calls from my listeners, and it was clear to me that they were totally involved and interested. I turned to the maintenance guys and asked them if they would object to going on the air to explain to my listeners what was going on. At first, they were hesitant, then one of them agreed to go on. We went on the air, and I asked the man to explain in simple, non-technical layman's terms what's going on. Well, sir, up above us there, the man said thoughtfully, pointing toward the ceiling, there's a commode that backed up.
He's been getting a shitstorm on his head. All right.
I looked blankly at him in disbelief as I considered all the havoc that had occurred within the last couple of hours. You mean a toilet overflowed, I asked, paraphrasing what he had said to make sure I fully understood this revelation. Yes, sir. There it was. Now the whole world knew that a horribly backed up toilet had showered its contents on my head. I was greatly embarrassed and disgusted by all this. I believe this was one of the hardest shows I did on radio. By morning when I got off the air, I got home as quickly as I could to rinse myself off from this foul mess. Not long afterwards, Claire Reese was screaming and yelling on my phone. Apparently, once the Plaza Hotel management learned I had broadcast that the hotel's plumbing went bad, they immediately wanted to kick our radio station out of the building.
Yeah. While that is unjustified, it is. I can see that happening. That's such a perfect storm of just everything going wrong. That you have this guy that is like making it a much more interactive show. So he thinks, oh yeah, I'll get one of these people to come in and talk about it. And it happens to be the thing that makes would make the hotel look the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Ultimately this blows over, especially because they're also getting a lot of notoriety and publicity essentially from this show. But it would not be the only wild thing to happen on West Coast AM. The other story that I was like, Jesus Christ. Art tells a story about how at one point he drank from a broken thermos while he was on air. And this thermos, I guess, had like parts of it that were made of glass.
Okay.
So he's like realizing that this thing's broken as he's drinking from it and believes that he's just ingested a bunch of broken glass.
Oh.
So this leads to people calling in, telling him, you need to get to a hospital right now. You are going to die, etc. And Art decides to stay on air to the bitter end. And one caller tells him, calls up and is just like, hey, I can save your life. And so this caller tells him, you need to eat like a shitload of bread. And Art's just like, okay, so I guess that like soaks up glass or something or whatever. But callers are on the air just calling up literally to be like, goodbye, thanks for doing your show. Sorry that you're going to die on air. And he gets
the weirdest open air funeral. Jesus
it's
Christ.
Really fucked. But he gets bread delivered to the station. So he like runs on a commercial break, grabs it, and during like a 3-minute break that he has, he eats like half the loaf of bread, just like scarfs it down. And when he comes back on air and like checks out the thermos, he finds out that there's like this sort of almost like partition between the thermos's inside and the outside of the thing, and the glass that had broken was actually on in between, so it didn't actually make it into the cup, so he did not drink any glass.
Good. Okay, but
he houses a loaf of bread for no reason.
Traumatized his listener base.
Yeah.
And housed half a loaf of bread for no reason.
Yeah. There's more drama at this radio station, but like this sort of like do whatever you want idea that this like I don't know. I get like this is really what would kind of become Coast to Coast. It gets a little more formal when he gets to Coast, but it has this very attitude of like, we can do whatever we want here. Now I'll spare you some details here. But the short version is in 1988, he meets a man named Alan Corbett, who is like a recording guy. He worked with, I read it.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah. He worked with, The Lovin' Spoonful. That's what it was.
Okay.
So like this is a guy who is familiar with recording, but he also is familiar with radio. They meet up and basically, Alan wants to help Art, achieve the goal that he wants from working in radio, which is to set up his own show. So a long story short, they're trying to syndicate the show. There's details, people like Alan at one point, like literally gets another station being like, hey, don't bother, like late night, radio is just like impossible to make, and it's impossible to make anything of it. Like it's really hard. But the short version of the story was that there is this, this pushback, and they kind of just pushed through it regardless, with their plan to set up the show. They iron out a bunch of these technical details and they get properly set up. And they sort of envision broadcasting across the entire country. So, kind of branching off of West Coast AM, they then transform that with this idea in mind, even though they're not quite to the point where they can broadcast across the whole country. They anticipate that that's where they are going to end up, and they call it Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Okay.
Now, Alan is a like key figure in trying to get them on the East Coast. And so like it has like again, it's like details that are it's not interesting. It's like, oh well, our time slot's awkward for the East Coast because it's 4 a.m. their time and blah blah blah. They're trying to iron out these details. So they change times around, but now the issue is they don't really know where they're going to broadcast from. He's trying to like make this career move off the back of his work at KDWN. And basically they don't know what they're going to do. And they decide, well, why don't we just do it at your home, Art? Like, why don't we just broadcast out of your house in Pahrump, Nevada?
So he gets a home studio set up and I honestly didn't know if Coast to Coast was run out of his house or if it was from somewhere else. And so it sounds like he at least for a while was doing it from his home.
Yeah, no, he did that almost exclusively for pretty much his entire career from this point forward. So, it's a bunch of like technical details, but the short version is they set it up at his house. It wasn't easy, but they did. And that is where I'm going to leave part 1. We're going to get into the show itself, the famous stuff that it's known for, and kind of its legacy in part 2. So that's part 1. That is, I skipped over details. If you really want to know more, check out The Art of Talk. That's his book on the subject. But honestly, I think I gave you all the really good beats from that story.
All the news that's fit to print.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
And we're going a bit long today, so if you're ready, I'm gonna hook you up with a pretty snappy big question, like a quick one.
All right. What Guinness World Record would I break? I think
better actually.
The quickest piss.
Oh, wait.
I'm gonna try to just get it all out at once, like immediately.
You know what? I'm just gonna run with this big question because I like it. So the quickest piss. So you're saying like this is like the quickest to like leave your urethra and like what, enter a toilet?
I mean, it's just like the shortest duration of a piss session.
Okay.
That is like, but still getting everything out. Like, I'm guessing there has to be some measurement of like, draining 300 cc's of liquid. I don't know how much a cc is. Hopefully that's not like a ridiculous amount of pee, but that amount of liquid as quickly as possible.
What is your method for doing this? Like, are you going to widen your urethra and then punch yourself in the kidney or something, or the bladder? I guess it would be. Not the kidney. I meant the bladder.
I'm just. Look, I've been working on this. I've been working on my times. Some people do games done quick. I do piss done quick, and it's all about concentration and the like force that you're generating with your Kegel muscles.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that pee is technically stored in the balls. So I guess you could like grab each ball and squeeze really hard as you're sort of to kind of push it out. Like
yeah.
So
it's like one of those those like squishy tube toy things where you push, you squeeze it at one end and it just inflates on the other end, except if you were, doing it with piss.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. I'm working on it. I've got it down to 1 second. World record is 0.87. Seeing if I can get there soon.
Okay, cool. Wow, what I didn't even like contemplate this question.
Because we went against the entire format of the show, and I jokingly made a big question that we're running
but
with. That makes sense
it's
that you haven't thought of it.
Better than my big question, or maybe I can move this big question to part 2. But I want to. God, there's no like. The thing is, like most world records just don't even seem like they would be that fun. Like if it's like eating something, that seems like it sucks. If it's staying up a certain amount of hours, that's not fun. Um,
I'm Googling funniest Guinness World Records.
okay.
Um,
Ooh,
and
I want the loudest expulsion of gas from my body.
okay, so we're both going a little,
Disgusting? Yes.
a little, yeah, a little blue
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna see like, and I think that we gotta kind of leave it open ended. Like, oh, does he do a big fart? Oh, does he do a big burp? I'm gonna fill myself up with things that make me gassy, and then
Can it be from multiple sources? Can you like fart and burp simultaneously and have it count together, or is it a single expulsion?
I think it's gonna have to be a single expulsion.
Okay.
Like I'm not getting like points for like stereo, body noises, right? Like,
Yeah, but you are going to use the Haas effect to double
yeah, I'm just
to make
saying
your
like
thing sound
it
thicker.
I'm just saying like
It's a little audio joke for you guys.
it could like if my method is like chugging like a big old thing of like Polar, or LaCroix, and then just absolutely slamming the shit out of my own guts, like punching myself in the gut to kind of force it out. That's going
Okay. I need to cut this off right now because you have now twice insinuated that you can expel things from your body faster if you punch yourself in organs. And I just need to for your own health. I know that sometimes you have some pains and stuff and some physical difficulties. I need you to realize that's not a good idea. I need you to stop punching yourself to try to expel waste faster.
Stop like crushing my throat to force burps out is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Stop like punching myself in the colon to push a toot out is what you're saying. So like I shouldn't do that?
You should not know.
Okay.
I did find so here's 60 of the weirdest Guinness World Records.
You said funniest.
From I know I couldn't find one called funniest. It was either craziest or weirdest, and I figured in honor of our show I'd go with this. So this one is most feet and armpits sniffed.
Oh,
that's number 6.
Christ. Ew.
Number 3 is heaviest train pulled with beard.
Oh.
And number 1 is kind of chilling.
Uh-huh.
It's most children delivered at a single birth to survive.
What?
So yeah, that's my whole thing about pissing really quickly doesn't feel that weird now after reading actual ones. So I'm gonna stick with it. I think we both have good world records.
Oh, wow. I mean, I can't do the birth one. So that one's kind of not possible.
That one is kind of beyond you. Yeah. So I think that's a good note to leave it on.
Yeah.
And we can move on to some business.
All right.
So if you want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/itgetsweirdpodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers from Stitcher to Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird and we're probably there.
Twitch.tv/itgetsweird. Check it out if you like games. If you're a gamer, you're going to love what we do on that channel, which is video games. Itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Tell me your favorite Art Bell radio segments. Maybe that's something I could like read on air for part 2. If people get them in time, I would be happy to read that. So check it out. You'd be feeding us. It's a good sort of service for us as well. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, we have It Gets Weird TV, a bonus show where we're watching the X-Files season 1. And we kind of cover that show and discuss it. And then at the $5 tier, we have another bonus show that comes out on the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. So you're getting bonus content every single week. Now, whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to our main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to our Discord where we're chatting about weird stuff all the time with our listeners. And I can't stress how big the backlog of bonus content is at this point. It's like years at this point. So you would have hours and hours and hours of listening if you donate to us.
From books to movies to TV shows to extra just one-off episodes to bonus shows done by individual people in the It Gets Weird universe. Like it is extensive.
Yeah.
So feel free to go to the Patreon and check all that out.
Yeah. We also have a $1 tier, which you don't get anything out of that. You're just saying, hey, I like what you do. Here's a tip. Take this $1 a month out of my damn pocket. and we thank you for it. But if you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle signing out. See you in part 2 of Art Bell. Peace.
Peace.